Welcome everyone to our geography lesson, incorporating Google Earth. I'm Emily.
Lindsay.
And so we're going to be sharing our screen with a little presentation that we made on Google Earth.
Okay, let's begin. All right, here's the introduction page for our Google Earth lesson. It is important to note that in the bottom right-hand corner, we are mentioning that this is going to be taught to a third grade classroom. So this is directed towards third grade, right? And so this is what we have in the beginning kind of as the key to the presentation of what is this going to be including. So navigating through today's lesson, we have point one, which is, the first part of it, which will be the lesson part, and then the next part two is the activity, part three is exploration, and part four is the assessment to see if they understand what we have set for the objective for the lesson.
We also have incorporated assessments throughout our lesson, but at the end we're kind of having
activities to just kind of get the information in their mind so that when we do the assessment we'll know if they got it or if they didn't do it.
Okay, so this lesson is based on the Massachusetts Common Core Standard 3.1b for social studies. So on a map of Massachusetts, locate major cities and towns: Cape Ann, Cape Cod, the Connecticut River, Merrimack River, the Charles River, and the Berkshire Hills. So we begin our lesson by talking about some of the students' prior knowledge. So asking them the question, what are some important locations in Massachusetts? So we could hear some of their answers, which most likely Cape Cod, Boston, other locations where most likely some places they have been, since we would be teaching this to students in the Massachusetts school system. And then we would go into kind of briefing like, okay, so today we're going to be talking about some important places, and then we'll be learning where they can be located using Google Earth. And then we'll be able to brief Google Earth a little bit for students. So as you can see here, as Google Earth loads, we'll kind of show them how that they can be using Google Earth. And this will be kind of our introductory lesson to Google Earth. And as it loads for us.
Yeah, so we hyperlinked a few things to the side so that when the students go through, they just tap them and it'll bring them to these key places on Google Earth to help with more of the how-to navigating part of Google Earth, so that it's just straightforward through there.
Yeah, so we can show them the search bar, which they most likely will not need for the first part of their activity, but it is helpful for them to know how to be able to use that portion of Google Earth. And then also located here in the bottom right-hand corner are the plus and minus signs, which means to zoom in, so they can use that to zoom in or zoom out to see what they want. And then additionally, something that might be useful for them is using this compass here. So they might have turned their view somehow, and they might not know how to get back so that they're viewing it from north to south. So those three things, the search bar, the zoom buttons, and the compass, are what we thought would be important to introduce to students on their first day of using Google Earth. So after talking about this, we'll introduce the key locations that we'll be focusing on for our lesson, which we set up in a 3-2-1 pattern. We did the three rivers: the Charles River, Connecticut River, Merrimack River, then the two capes, Cape Ann and Cape Cod, and then lastly the Berkshire Hills. So for this part of our lesson, we would talk about students see what, if they have heard of these places, which most likely some of them have at least Cape Cod, and for children on the North Shore, Cape Ann, some of them most likely will know what that is, since it's like 20-30 minutes from here. So we will briefly discuss the definitions of what is a river, talking about it's a natural stream of water that flows to a larger body of water, such as a lake or an ocean. And then talking about a cape, which is a piece of land that extends out into a body of water, which is a simplified definition that we made to help students be able to understand this concept. And we can also talk about what a hill is, which I defined as a lump of land, which is probably not the most descriptive definition of a hill, but most of them should be able to know what that is. And then we'll go into our activity, which Lindsay will explain for us.
Yeah. Okay, so this looks like a lot, but it's really to the point. So basically the directions are right underneath the interactive activity block up top, where it says read the fun fact in each box. So each of these has a fun fact, and they're going to read each of those and then press on the number that correlates or goes with each of the facts. And that is hyperlinked, so I'll show you one after I read the directions, but it hyperlinks you to the Google Earth URL. And so when you press it, it'll take you directly to one of the places at the bottom. And so that place it takes you to will answer where the fun fact is about. So then when they come back to this slide after they've unveiled the location of the fun fact, they'll come back here and they'll take one of these locations and drag it into the bubbles that are right next to it, just to answer kind of like an interactive worksheet that you can do online rather than on their own. So each student would have a copy of these slides and be able to do it on their own. And then after we could go in and assess that and look through and see what they did do, what they didn't, if they just dragged them random places or if they took the time. But yeah, I'll show you. So for example, this river is the source of drinking water for around 500,000 people in Massachusetts. Where do you think that is, Emily?
I don't know. Let's click on number 1.
Yeah, let's click on number 1. And I wish we had some elevator music in here, but unfortunately we don't. Yeah, Emily will sing for us. But this is the suspense, this is the fun of the entire thing. You're just sitting there wondering and second guessing your guess. Or what? Here we go. Ta-da! The Merrimack River. And I did attach it. I linked this one specifically to the reservoir because it would have brought us to a different state. I'm not sure. Do you remember? I think it was New Hampshire. It would bring you to New Hampshire, where the Merrimack River is also in, but it doesn't, we wanted them to focus obviously on Massachusetts and where it is relative to Massachusetts because of the assessment that'll be later. So I did link it to the reservoir, but that shouldn't confuse them much. I think it's pretty straightforward that it's the Merrimack River. Yeah. So.
And then students can also use the different tips that we taught them about.
Yeah, zooming in, zooming out.
Just to kind of get a feel of where the Merrimack River is in Massachusetts,
right?
Because they'll be assessed on that.
Right, in location to everything else. Like when you look at the big picture, like where is it, and you find that it's in the corner, of the state. Right. Well, it'll take a while, but you understand. So it's like that. Should make it bigger. There we go. See if there's anything else. Yeah, so that's what they would do as their interactive activity. And then moving on after that, they would go to an exploration piece where they can really just feel free to explore more. So
yeah, so we thought it'd be important to incorporate this aspect, especially for students that are like fast finishers, also just to give them a little bit of freedom to explore Massachusetts. So they have some boundaries in that, but they can also use their skills that they learned about Google Earth. They can continue to explore the places that we listed, the 6 locations that we focused on in this lesson. But they can also see where those places are relative to places like Boston or other locations that they might know around their state. And in addition to that, we have this activity, especially for fast finishers, can you find the coordinates? So they can use the search bar that we taught them about and go and search up these places and actually type in the coordinates. This might be somewhat more complicated for certain students, but we could have prefaced it with having talked about latitude and longitude and having them be familiar with the coordinates, which can also be found in the bottom right hand corner.
Yeah, so I think this, even in the directions, it says like search each location. So like they would put in probably this first and then they could also go in. So it's more of an extension of like, can you find these coordinates and then how do you use them? So they'd take them and obviously they would insert them into these boxes too, so that we could see that they did go in and they actually found the coordinates and they know where to identify them, because it does say here like they will be located at the bottom right, corner. So like they did read through this and they did, find them and they wrote them down. We gave an example of what it should look like, and then they'd write it down in here. And then like, even as an extension of that, they could go back in and try them out for fast finishers who are, progressing further along than other students. They can go in and try this out just to really extend and emphasize the learning and the use of Google Earth, so that again, when they get to the assessment, we'll know that they really did engage with it.
Here's
the assessment. Yeah, so here's the assessment. So we just got like a basic outline of Massachusetts, and so and we drew in the little rivers so that, because there are 3, that is harder to pinpoint on a completely blank map. So this is for them to use what they remember from Google Earth. So the anticipation is that they aren't using Google Earth for this part, because it's really just an assessment. It's not a graded quiz. It's just more of like, did you go through the learning? And because if you have engaged with it in the activity and into the exploration part, then you will have a general idea of where these things are on the map. So that is our goal, that they can go through and then take these. So they'll just take these little parts right here. They're all connected, so they just will drag the title and the little marker part to where it should be, just in around to where it might be in the location. It wouldn't be super specific, but just more of like, do they have the general idea of where these would be? And for the rivers, which river is it? So just very much emphasizing the point of, can they actually meet the objective and meet the standard, which is, can they put these on the map? All right.
You did it. We made it through the lesson.
Yeah.
And now it is time to debrief. So we made this lesson something that could be used in the real life classroom, but also in the virtual classroom. So everything in this PowerPoint could be done by students like on their own time. As like you can see, like we could share the PowerPoint with them, and then they can move different things in different slides and add into the slides their answers to just the coordinates. So that is nice, a nice aspect for this lesson, especially in our current times with COVID. Also, if you did want to make it a real life lesson, that is an option as well. I mean, a lot of the students in the schools now either have iPads or Chromebooks, so you could either do it on a laptop or you could do it as a whole group activity in the classroom. Might be a little bit harder to do it that way, but we wanted to kind of show how it could be done in both ways. So do you have anything to add, Lindsay?
Yeah, I think that, especially based off of my observation in the classroom I'm in with the hybrid model that I'm watching and observing, the teacher, they're working in Google Classroom, so things are all tied together where she can make a PowerPoint presentation. And so we specifically made it so the lesson part is our actual explicit instruction. So that's all they really need from us, is to explicitly explain those things, and then we can send them off and they could do the rest on their own. There shouldn't be much questions, but I know that my teacher who I work with, she keeps her Google Classroom Meet open at all times, so if they do need to come back and ask a question, they can. But it's more of like, for them, it's really, it's an asynchronous thing. It's more of like really student-led, so that they can go, especially in the exploration part, they can really go and like let their interests drive them to where they want to like look into more. So I think that that's really important for them to have this like, something that they can do on their own that doesn't really need much of our intervention. But again, as Emily was saying, if we were to do this in the classroom, it wouldn't be a PowerPoint. It'd be more of like, let's explore together. So the whole class would kind of be dedicated to explicit instruction throughout this exploration process, where everyone's, picking a place that they want to look up or going up and doing things. But because we can't really be touching things and having children moving around, this is probably the best, case scenario for how we would present this lesson.
Yeah, and I think the PowerPoint too, something I was thinking about relative to our students that have special needs or need some different accommodations, is like you can incorporate for directions that I know right now a lot of kids are struggling with reading, so you can incorporate little speaker icons and have it like for long directions, have students click on it to be able to hear the directions. That's something that's nice about this PowerPoint model of being able to incorporate that for students, even if they're not actually physically there with another person.
Right, there is definitely modifications that could be made. Again, like each PowerPoint could be individualized for the student. If there's too much instruction on the activity page, it could be separated into a few different activities, and then completely remove one of them, the exploration part, which would be for the fast, the people who are going through it quicker, so that they are still getting the intended learning from it, but they're not feeling frustrated or overwhelmed with the amount of things that they have to do in the short amount of time that they have.
Well, thank you for coming to our workshop.
Yeah.
That's all we got. See ya.
Bye.